Hey friends, happy Sunday and welcome back to another week of What's for Dinner. Today I have a week of dinners that I made for my family to share with you. I share these every Sunday to hopefully give you some motivation to cook more for your family and give you some new meal ideas. I've got a bunch of delicious dinners coming up in this video, 3 of which come from one of my favorite cookbooks that I've had since I was 17. It's the Promise edition of the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, but I believe it is just like the classic Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, just with a couple extra recipes. And I don't think I've actually made any of the special Promise edition recipes, so you should be able to find most of these in the original Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. I will have it linked down below, as well as all of the recipes that I am making. Now let's go ahead and get into this week's What's for Dinner. Friday night we had a Cat KFC Bowls. There's not really a recipe to this. You're just going to want to cook up some popcorn chicken or chicken nuggets or something. I'm using chicken tenders and then I will cut into bite-sized pieces. We love these Tyson ones. I get them at Sam's Club. And then I had some mashed potatoes in the freezer. You could use whatever mashed potatoes, some boxed mashed potatoes, whatever. But anytime I make mashed potatoes and there's leftovers, I always freeze them. So I thawed those out, warmed them up on the stove, and then I made a can of corn. I just added some butter and salt and pepper to that. And then for the gravy, I like to usually mix together 1 package of beef gravy and 1 package of chicken gravy. Like the brown and the chicken mixed together is what I've heard is the closest that you can get to KFC's, because apparently that's what they do. But Aldi was out of chicken gravy, so I just used turkey this time and it turned out great. I cooked my chicken tenders in the air fryer, and then when everything was done, we just put all the stuff together in our bowl and topped it with some cheddar cheese, and these are always delicious. I always forget about doing them, but my friend Jess over at Jess and the Boys did them recently, and I was like, oh yes, and I wrote it down because I wanted those. On Saturday, I made a lemon chicken pasta toss. This is the first recipe that is coming from the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. I've made this one many times and we absolutely love it. So I'm starting off with some chicken breast that I have cut up into bite-sized pieces, and I've got that in a Ziploc bag, and to that I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of some flour, and then the recipe doesn't call for it, but I add in some seasoning. So I added in some onion, salt, some pepper, and some garlic powder, and then I just toss that all around and made sure the chicken was coated with that really well. And then in a skillet, I'm heating up 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm going to cook my chicken in that. I try to get it not on top of each other, in a nice even layer, and let it cook for 4 minutes on one side, and then flip them over and cook them for another 4 minutes or until they're cooked through on the other side. Then you get a nice crispy sear on the outside. While my chicken was cooking, I brought a pot of salted water to a boil to cook up some penne noodles. Don't do like me. You only need about half a box of penne, but I wasn't reading the directions and I forgot. And I dumped the whole thing in. So I ended up having leftover penne that I didn't use for this, but it was okay because we used it for lunch on another day. But you don't need a whole box. You only need half of a box. When the chicken was done, I removed it from the pan, and then I added in about another tablespoon of olive oil, and I'm going to cook up some garlic. The recipe also calls for shallot, but most of the time I leave that out because that's not something that I can find at Aldi where I typically shop. But I'm just adding in the garlic and letting it cook for about a minute, and then I'm going to stir in some chicken broth, about 3/4 of a cup, and 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, and then some salt and pepper, and I'm just gonna let that simmer for a little bit, 5 minutes, until it starts to reduce. Once that has reduced, then you can just stir in your chicken and your cooked pasta, And then this is ready to eat. I also usually add in some parsley, and you can add in capers. The original recipe calls for capers. I've tried it with capers before, but my family doesn't like the capers, so I just usually leave those out. And then to serve this, we just top it with some Parmesan cheese. It's super light, but really delicious. I love the lemony flavor of it. Would definitely recommend trying this recipe if you like lemon. Sunday night, we had another favorite from the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, and this is spaghetti pie. So I'm starting off by bringing some salted water to a boil. Gonna cook up some spaghetti. We only need about 4 ounces of dried spaghetti. Then I'm going to cook up my ground beef. So for the actual recipe, you only need half a pound of ground beef, but I always freeze my meat in like 1 pound packages. So I'll cook it up and then refreeze it cooked or use it for another meal. And I actually use this with leftover penne noodles and leftover pasta sauce and had it for lunch. But I am cooking up the ground beef with some seasoning. I always usually do like my spaghetti meat with some Italian seasoning, some garlic powder, some onion salt, some pepper, and then just cook it up and cook it till it's no longer pink. And then when it's done, I'm going to remove half of this and save it for something else. Then to the remaining meat, I'm going to add half a jar of spaghetti sauce. My favorite is the marinara from Aldi. The original recipe does have you adding in like a can of tomato sauce and some seasonings to kind of make your own sauce, but I take the shortcut and just use some jarred pre-made spaghetti sauce. And then the rest of that jar of sauce is what I used with that penne. Again, nothing is going to waste. You can also freeze the spaghetti sauce too if you're not going to use it. And then once my noodles are done to them, I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon of butter, and then once that's all melted, I'm going to add in 1 egg that I beat and 1/4 of a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And stir that around, make sure it's all mixed really well, and then we're going to transfer these noodles to a greased pie plate. I sprayed it with some olive oil cooking spray, and then put the noodles in there and spread them out all along the bottom and up the sides to kind of form a crust. Then on top of that spaghetti noodle crust, I'm going to spread 1 cup of cottage cheese. Then I topped that with my meat sauce and then a bunch of shredded mozzarella cheese. The recipe calls for half a cup. I definitely do more than half a cup of mozzarella cheese. But then I put this in the oven on 350 for 25 minutes. And then when it comes out, I usually let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes before slicing up. And you can cut it into little wedges just like a pie. And usually it holds its shape pretty well. This night it didn't because I didn't let it sit for as long as I should have. It's like lasagna. You let it rest and then it holds its shape better. To go with it, we had some fresh veggies or a little salad. Monday night, I made another recipe from the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. This one was new to us. It's called creamy chicken and noodles, and it's done in the crock pot. So I'm starting off by mixing together the sauce mixture. For that, I'm going to do half a cup of water, 2 cans of cream of chicken soup, about a teaspoon of dried thyme. If you don't really like thyme, you could cut it out or just cut the amount down, and then some pepper. And I whisk that all together really well. Then in my crock pot, I have some carrots, some onion, and celery. And then I'm adding in some parsley and bay leaf. I did 1 onion. The recipe called for 3 medium-sized onions. I just did 1, and then I did about 5 good-sized carrots and 2 stalks of celery. And then on top of my veggies, I'm going to add my chicken. The recipe said it preferred for you to use like some bone-in chicken. I didn't have any. I just used 2 chicken breasts, laid those on top, and then seasoned those with some seasoning. You could really use whatever seasoning you want. I just used some Cavender's seasoning. It's got a little bit of everything in there: salt, pepper, garlic, all of that stuff. So I just used that to keep it simple. And then I covered that with that sauce that we made. And then I put a lid on this and let it cook on high for 4.5 hours. Once this was done, I removed the chicken. If If you wanted to, you could just shred it up in there, or if you're using bone-in, you're going to want to take out the bones, obviously. But I wanted mine more like diced up, so I took it out and cut it up, and then I also took out the bay leaf. And then once I had my chicken cut up, I just added that back in. I also added in half a can of peas that I drained. You could also add in frozen peas if you want, but we don't prefer frozen peas. So I added my chicken in and the peas, and then I just let that sit while I prepared some noodles. I cooked up half of a bag of egg noodles, and then I just served this over top of the egg noodles, and it was delicious. Everyone loved it. The longer you let it like sit, the more the sauce like thickens up. It was great as leftovers, like really good. The kids loved it. I loved it. Andy loved it. I will definitely make this recipe again, and I'm really glad I like went out and tried some new recipes out of my cookbook. Tuesday night, we just had taco rice bowls. This was actually one of those Kinder's rice kits that I got at Dollar Tree a while back. I think it was the fajita one. It gives you the rice and the seasoning for the rice, and then it also gives you a taco seasoning packet for the meat. So I just cooked that up according to the box directions, and then we had some pico, some cheese. I forgot beans, so we didn't do beans, but lettuce, salsa, and I didn't show it in the video, but we also had some tortilla chips. I crushed mine up. The kids kind of ate it with chips, but yeah, quick and easy dinner. Wednesday night we had cheeseburger crescent ring, which if you've been here for a while, you have seen this. I've been making it since like the very beginning of my channel. I put the recipe video for this up, I think, before I ever even started making what's for dinners. But I'm just going to start off by browning a pound of ground beef. I seasoned it with some salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder, but you can use whatever you like. Just crumble that up and brown it until it's all the way cooked through. And then when it's cooked through, I like to add in about 2 tablespoons of ketchup, a tablespoon of mustard, and about a tablespoon of pickle juice, and mix that together really well. And then I'm going to take 2 tubes of Crescent dough and arrange them in like a sun shape. It's very hard for me to describe this. Watching the video is definitely easier. I take the wider end of the triangles and kind of overlap them so we get like a circle and all the points are out. And then we can go in with our ground beef and kind of put it in the middle of the circle and then top that with some cheese. I usually like to do some sliced cheddar cheese. It's easier, but you can use shredded or American, whatever you want to use. Put your cheese on there. If you want pickles, you can also top it with some sliced pickles. We prefer not to. Andy would like them, but I just leave it without any. I got the pickle juice in there, and then we do pickles on the side. And then once you have everything in there that you want in there, then you can take those points and fold them over to the center. So you've got a nice little ring now. And then this goes in the oven on 375 for about 25 minutes. And to go with this, we just had some tater tots and some pickles on the side. Sometimes I do salad, but I just kept it simple with tater tots and pickles this night. Thursday night, I made it chicken and stuffing in the crock pot. So I'm starting off by mixing together 1/3 cup of milk and 1 can of cream of chicken soup. I'm just going to whisk that together really well until it's nice and combined. And then in a bowl, I'm going to mix together 2 boxes of stuffing. Anytime I make one of these like chicken and stuffing dishes, I always double the stuffing part because we prefer more stuffing. So I do 2 boxes of stuffing. I'm using the cornbread stuffing, which is new to me. I've never used cornbread stuffing. But it's what I had on hand. So I did that, and then I doubled the broth. So I did 2 1/3 cups of chicken broth, but the recipe will be down below if you don't want to double the stuffing part. And then in my crock pot, I'm adding some boneless, skinless chicken thighs, seasoning them up with some salt and pepper and garlic powder and onion salt. I wanted to do paprika, but I was actually out, so I left that out. And then on top of that, I poured the cream of chicken soup and milk mixture, and then I topped it with the stuffing, and I covered this and cooked it on low for 6 hours. After 6 hours, the chicken was all cooked. You could just spoon out some chicken and stuffing and like graviness, and it's delicious. We really liked the cornbread stuffing. We thought it was good. And I made a can of carrots to go on the side of this. Typically I would do green beans, but I was like, you know what? We don't have carrots very often. So I made some canned carrots to go with this. And it was delicious. I make a chicken and stuffing bake that goes in the oven, and it has like Swiss cheese with it and everything. But I liked this one too. And that is going to be it for this week's What's for Dinner. I hope that y'all enjoyed it. I hope that you got some new meal ideas. If you did, let me know which ones you plan on trying in the comments down below. And if you made it here all the way to the end, make sure you leave me a smiley face emoji in the comments as well. I hope y'all have a great week, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!